After decades, Jennifer Aniston is finally talking about a love she never put a name to, until now. Fans always suspected their bond was deeper than screen chemistry, deeper than friendship, quieter than headlines. But tonight, she opened a door Hollywood kept locked. Was he the one she measured every love after? The answer is louder than ever. It happened during what should have been another harmless interview. Jennifer Aniston, calm as ever, smiling under soft studio lights. Then, out of nowhere, she said it. He knew me better than anyone ever could. No names, no setup, just that one line that hit like a grenade. The host blinked, unsure if she meant an ex, a co-star, or a ghost from her past. Jennifer smirked, sipped her coffee, and changed the subject. But for fans watching, that silence spoke louder than anything she said next. Twitter, Reddit, tabloids. Everyone knew who she meant. It wasn't Brad, it wasn't Vince, it was Matthew. Within hours, old clips resurfaced. The 1995 Friends interviews where his eyes followed her off camera. The blooper reels where she laughed too long at his jokes. In one behind-the-scenes shot, he's whispering something that makes her turn pink, then they both freeze when they realize cameras are still rolling. People close to the show swear that chemistry wasn't acting. One crew member once joked, they didn't need to rehearse the flirting, that came free. Even Courtney Cox once admitted, their timing together was dangerous. That one sentence, he knew me better than anyone, reopened a door she had locked years ago. Because if that's true, then maybe Friends wasn't the only thing that ended in 2004. And what happened next on that set would break one of its biggest rules, a rule they both quietly ignored. Everyone on Friends knew the rule, don't date your co-stars, period. It wasn't written on paper, but it was the kind of unspoken law that kept the set from turning into chaos. The producers warned them early, around 1994. Keep the chemistry on screen. Keep the drama off it. But by the second season, that rule started to bend. Jennifer and Matthew's on-screen banter looked too sharp to be scripted. Crew members said it was the small things that gave them away. His hand resting too long on her chair, her laugh coming half a beat too late, as if caught off guard by her own feelings. By 1996, gossip started to slip through the cracks. People who worked on Stage 24 said the two often rehearsed alone, long after the rest of the cast had gone home. One lighting technician even told a reporter years later, there was something electric when it was just them. You could feel it even in the dark. Matthew joked in interviews that he had a crush on her from day one, but played it cool because she was way out of my league. Fans took it as humor, but the truth? Everyone knew there was a line, and they were standing right on it. Something finally crossed that line one night after a long rehearsal, behind a locked dressing room door when the world outside went completely quiet. And what happened next became the story every crew member still whispers about decades later. It happened during Season 3, sometime in late 1996. The cast had been filming late for 3 nights straight. Everyone was tired, cranky, and running on caffeine, except 2 people who somehow looked wide awake. Jennifer and Matthew stayed behind after the others left, saying they wanted to run lines for a reshoot. The crew locking up said they heard low voices behind the door. Laughter first, then silence, then something else. One assistant later told a magazine, "You could tell when a conversation shifts. It's no longer about work." Nobody saw anything, but in Hollywood, the lack of proof usually fuels the loudest rumors. A few days later, a sound tech swore he heard a soft thud through the wall while doing an audio check. He joked about it for years, calling it the scene that never aired. By then, the gossip was spreading like wildfire. Whispers about the door, the sound, and the fact that both actors looked unusually quiet during the next morning's shoot. When Matthew came out later, he had that half smile, the one fans remember from Chandler Bing's best moments, except this one didn't reach his eyes. Jennifer, hours later, was seen in the makeup trailer staring at her reflection. Quiet. Whatever happened in that dressing room, never made it into tabloids officially, but insiders say it changed how they looked at each other forever. Because the next time they showed up together, at a cast party, the energy had completely shifted. And that night, everyone finally saw it. It was December 1996, the annual Friends cast party at a private home in the Hollywood Hills. Everyone was there, producers, writers, assistants, even a few studio executives. Music loud, champagne flowing, laughter echoing across the pool. But under all that noise, something subtle was changing. Matthew showed up late. He looked sharp, sober, focused, the way people look when they're nervous for reasons that have nothing to do with work. Jennifer arrived 20 minutes later, glowing, hair pulled back, eyes searching the crowd before she even grabbed a drink. People noticed. Through the night, they drifted toward each other like magnets. A conversation near the bar, quiet laughs in the corner, the kind of body language that everyone in the room could feel. David Schwimmer later said during a reunion, "You could tell when someone's wavelength matched." They didn't have to say a word. Then, somewhere around midnight, Matthew disappeared. 5 minutes later, Jennifer too. Some said they went to the balcony. Others swore they slipped upstairs. No photos, no proof, only the quiet that followed. When they returned, eyes glossy, both smiling like people who had crossed an invisible line, the room fell into a different kind of silence. That night changed how the entire cast looked at them. Courtney Cox even joked later that week, "You two need to stop writing your own script." But soon, that glow faded into something darker, a pattern of timing, heartbreak, and self-destruction that fans still debate decades later. Because the next year, his battle with addiction began. The same year, her love life took a turn that would break him in ways no one saw coming. In 1997, Matthew Perry walked into a Los Angeles hospital after a jet ski accident. But what doctors found had little to do with broken bones. He had developed a dependence on Vicodin, taking as many as 55 pills a day. Around the same time, Jennifer's personal life took center stage. Her romance with Brad Pitt began making headlines. The timing was uncanny. Just months apart, their lives split into two very different stories. While Jennifer was stepping into Hollywood's golden light, Matthew was fighting through its shadows. He later said in interviews, "I was on Friends, making $1 million an episode, and I was sick every day." On set, people noticed changes. He'd forget lines, drift off between takes, laugh too quickly, or not at all. Jennifer pulled him aside once, quietly asking, "Are you okay?" He told her he was fine. He wasn't. By mid-1998, she and Brad married in a Malibu ceremony that looked like a fairy tale. Weeks later, Matthew entered rehab for the first time. The headlines framed it as a health break. Insiders knew better. Castmates later revealed that Jennifer visited him privately. No photos, no PR, just her hand on his, a moment no one was meant to see. He came back to Friends thinner, quieter, and sober, at least for a while. But what no one knew was that her wedding wasn't the hardest part for him. The hardest part came months later, when jealousy stopped being private and started leaking through cameras. By early 1999, the world saw Jennifer Aniston and Brad Pitt as Hollywood's golden couple. Their red carpet photos flooded magazines. Reporters called them perfection on two legs. But behind the scenes, one person on the Friends set struggled to keep his smile steady: Matthew Perry. Every award show felt like slow torture. The cameras panned across the cast, lingering on Jennifer and Brad's glowing smiles. Matthew often sat just seats away, clapping, eyes heavy. Crew members later recalled how he'd make a joke right before those moments, a deflection like armor. He once told a friend, "Everyone's happy for her, and I am too." Just not the same way those close to him said he was drinking again by then. Not hard liquor at first, just to take the edge off. But edges like that don't dull easily. During one Golden Globes night, 2000, Brad leaned in and kissed Jennifer mid-interview. The next day, Matthew showed up late to rehearsal, eyes red, voice flat. Lisa Kudrow later said she'd never seen him that quiet. The press called him Hollywood's funny man with a dark side. They had no idea how close they were. Behind his humor was longing mixed with resentment because he had loved her before Brad ever did. That triangle never made headlines officially, but everyone on set could feel it. And that silent tension led to one of the most mysterious stories in their friendship, the private phone call that changed everything. Who picked up that phone before dawn? And why does she still refuse to talk about it? In 2001, Matthew Perry hit one of the darkest points in his life. He had just finished filming Serving Sarah, a shoot so clouded by alcohol and pills that he barely remembered being on set. His weight dropped below 145 pounds, and his friends couldn't reach him anymore. Then, one morning around 4 a.m., his phone rang. He would later tell interviewers, "One person called me when nobody else did." That voice brought me back. He never said who, but fans, tabloids, even castmates had one guess: Jennifer. They'd stayed close through his relapses. She was the one who looked him straight in the eye and said, "We care, but you have to want to be here." It was 2004 when he shared that memory, and she was still careful never to confirm it. Every time an interviewer tried to bring it up, she dodged with grace and a half smile, like someone protecting a secret too personal to share. People who worked with them claim she called him more than once during those years. Once from a set, once after a premiere, once after hearing from someone that he'd gone missing for days. When he later told People magazine, she reached out when no one else did. The world filled in the blanks. She never spoke about those calls again, but her silence said enough. There was loyalty there that never faded, even when distance did. Still, behind those calls was another shared truth: two people suffering in opposite ways. One numbed the pain, the other buried it alive. So how did two broken hearts end up mirroring each other so perfectly, yet never meet in the middle again? By 2003, both Jennifer Aniston and Matthew Perry were living inside completely different kinds of pain. His was visible: erratic weight changes, exhaustion, and another trip to rehab that same year. Hers was hidden: public smiles masking quiet exhaustion from a marriage already cracking behind the camera flashes. Matthew often joked that fame never cured loneliness. In interviews, he said, "I was surrounded by people, but completely alone." That wasn't an exaggeration. He was filming the whole 10 yards while battling withdrawals, struggling through scenes that required energy he didn't have. Jennifer, meanwhile, was promoting Along Came Polly and still defending her marriage to Brad. The tabloids had already begun whispering about tension, about missed red carpets, about two people who stopped laughing together. Inside, she was fighting her own kind of grief, the loss of something she couldn't fix. Those who knew them say they often checked in quietly. Short calls, late texts, a pattern of reaching out and pulling back, like two people standing at opposite ends of a bridge too fragile to cross. On-set reunions were bittersweet. The chemistry was still there, but softer now, lined with history and restraint. One producer once said, "They looked at each other like old promises." He drowned his sadness with pills and alcohol. She buried hers under the image of Hollywood's sweetheart. Both were breaking, just differently. And when Friends filmed its final scene, that invisible wound came to the surface. Because what happened during that last hug wasn't acting. It was something much more real. In 2004, when the final Friends episode wrapped, the entire cast gathered on Stage 24, the same set they'd called home for 10 years. The cameras stopped, the crew applauded, and for a brief second, time seemed to freeze. Everyone hugged, but one hug went on a little longer than the rest: Jennifer and Matthew. Those who were there remember the silence. It wasn't dramatic, just still. She held on tighter. He pressed his forehead against hers. It looked like closure, but to people who'd watched them for years, it felt like something unfinished. After the shoot, they stayed behind. The others left for interviews and photos, but they lingered near the couch, hands still touching. An assistant recalled later, "It was like they were saying goodbye to more than just the show." That moment never made it into the bloopers or behind-the-scenes specials. It lived in memory, in quiet retellings from crew who swore they saw tears in both their eyes. When asked about it years later, Jennifer smiled faintly and said, "We all loved each other deeply." She never added more, but everyone could feel the sentence she didn't finish. Matthew later admitted he struggled for months after the finale, saying the show's end felt like losing family. Many suspected that wasn't the only loss he was mourning, because when the spotlight faded, their connection shifted again, from public laughter to private grief. And that silence became even louder years later, when one of them never woke up. By the time Friends ended in 2004, the world had already built its version of their story. Jennifer married Hollywood's biggest star, and Matthew became the lovable but troubled genius everyone rooted for. But behind closed doors, it wasn't fame separating them. It was survival. Jennifer had entered a new phase. Press tours, movie deals, red carpets, all demanding perfection. Matthew was still fighting his addiction, going in and out of treatment centers across California. He once said in a 2013 interview, "You can be in a room full of people and feel completely alone." That loneliness became his shadow. They kept contact, but less often. Friends say they would send emails, short messages that said, "Proud of you," or "Thinking of you." Small reminders that the bond hadn't disappeared. It just lived quietly, under everything else. Hollywood doesn't forgive softness. The tabloids speculated about her love life, about his relapses, about the what-ifs that haunted both of them. But through it all, they never disrespected each other in the press. Never a bad word, never a denial of care. That silence was their shield. By 2010, they had become two people walking parallel paths, close enough to remember, too far to return. When asked if they ever dated, Jennifer once smiled and said, "Timing is everything, and ours never worked." But years later, timing came back in the cruelest way. Because when tragedy struck, her quiet heartbreak finally showed. And the world saw what her words never said. On October 28, 2023, Matthew Perry was found unresponsive in his Los Angeles home. He was 54. The news spread fast, one headline after another, every outlet flashing the same photo, his quiet smile, the one people had grown up with. Within hours, the world started grieving a man they felt they knew, but very few actually did. Jennifer Aniston didn't post right away. She didn't issue a statement, didn't attend interviews. The internet waited for her words, dissecting her silence as if it held clues. But for her, this wasn't celebrity news. It was personal loss, the kind that doesn't fit into captions. When she finally spoke weeks later, her words were soft, almost trembling. "He made people laugh every day. I miss him deeply," she wrote. But those close to her said the real grief was quieter. Private messages to friends, old clips replayed at home, phone calls that ended mid-sentence. Court documents later revealed no foul play, but fans noticed the irony. Matthew had been clean for 19 months, training for a new movie, writing a second book. He had turned his pain into purpose. Jennifer reportedly broke down reading his memoir again, especially the part where he called her the one who reached out the most. That line hit differently now, because her next confession, the one she gave months later, wasn't about fame or friendship or tragedy. It was about love that never expired. And when she finally said it, the world stopped breathing. In late 2023, just weeks after Matthew Perry's passing, Jennifer Aniston sat down for what was supposed to be a light-hearted interview about her skincare brand. But halfway through, the tone changed. The host brought up Matthew's book, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. Her smile faded. She took a long pause before saying, "He was part of my DNA. We grew up together. Losing him changed me." The internet caught that phrase immediately. Part of my DNA. It didn't sound like a casual memory. It sounded like someone describing a missing piece of themselves. That clip alone reached over 40 million views in 24 hours. Then came her longer statement. She wrote, "He knew me better than anyone ever could." No filters, no attempt to soften it for headlines. Fans who'd followed their story for decades called it her unfinished love letter. Behind the scenes, insiders said Jennifer had called his family before going public to tell them how much he meant to her. She even helped coordinate a private memorial away from cameras with Courtney Cox and Lisa Kudrow by her side. Those who attended said she cried through most of it. One guest recalled, "It wasn't loud grief. It was quiet, deep, the kind that stays with you." When asked if she ever told him how she really felt, she just smiled. Some soul connections burn quietly and forever. Some love stories wait decades to be spoken.